This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
This is just one of those weird weather days, man. Can't make up its mind whether or not it wants to storm or not. It's kind of screwing with my recording schedule, because I don't know whether or not to go ahead and record. Figuring I might lose power halfway through, or the loud booming thunder just blaring in the background. For now, I think we're safe. It was really bad about 20 minutes ago. But we're going to proceed, and we're going to talk about some wrestling here. We've got the real calm before the storm with Retro Raw. Next weekend is SummerSlam 1995. I have been anxiously counting down the days as we approach that godforsaken pay-per-view. Then I realized this week was a go-home show. I was like, crap. As always, make sure you all subscribe, comment, and rate if you have not already. For those that do not know, this is the Five Starr Wrestling Report. Here on YouTube and Rumble, Mondays and Fridays for brand new shows every week. The wrestling podcast that nobody knows, but everybody needs. Wow, that is a great tagline. I'm glad I thought of it. 2.5, almost 3 years into this channel, and I finally found something. A catchphrase. The wrestling show nobody knows, but everybody needs. That is a brilliant way to sell myself short before I ever get out of the gate. At least I'm being frank. But hey, whatever. It is what it is, right? I never set out to make money doing this. I just set out to have some fun and give myself some kind of side hustle that actually interests me. Music and wrestling. The only two passions I've ever had, and the only two stablemates that have ever stood by me through thick and thin. And I am more than okay with that. So I can confidently say, we had one bright spot with Raw this week. We got to see The Undertaker work. I know that probably doesn't sound like much, but hey, we're also grasping at straws for good stuff to talk about in 1995. The Undertaker was on the show working a match. Good. I'll take it. Even though everything about this feud with him and Kama sucks. It's been going on for half a fucking year. And it's never been remotely interesting. We were at least given some kind of kayfabe explanation to finally write off the creatures of the night. Kama beat up the one dude who tried to gather up Taker's broken wreath. The bastard got what was coming to him. And the same goes with Tatanka, who unfortunately got to rest in peace some later on. Before we get into all that. Oh, and by the way, this also might be a good time to remind us, yes, The Undertaker is still around. He's still collecting souls and collecting paychecks of some description. It really is kind of amazing how little we've actually seen of The Undertaker in 1995 and how much more of him we'll be seeing in the next 3 to 5 years. He's been a total non-factor on television. I'm glad we won't be seeing all that much of Men on a Mission in the next year. They had a quick tag squash with two dorks, one of whom I simply noted as John Hancock. Pretty sure his name was just John Hancock, but what can I say? I'm a child. Penis jokes are funny. Took Vince less than 15 seconds into the match here to mark out for Mabel's gigantic 568-pound body. The only thing I really noted here about the match is the fact that the heel spent a long-ass time beating on poor Hancock. Probably caught wind of the guy's name and said, "Oh, we're going to fuck around with this poor sap." We also had a moment on commentary where Vince mentioned that Psycho Sid would be facing the winner of Razor versus Shawn for the IC belt at SummerSlam, noting that match would be taking place on the September 11th edition of Raw, to which he followed up by saying, "Which means Raw will be preempted." Lawler goes, "Do you know why Raw will be preempted on 9/11, Vince?" And Vince casually goes, golf. Somebody want to tell him? I know it predates the attack by 6 years. Fuck you. I was trying to make a tasteless joke. It was kind of ironic timing. For the record, Lawler's claim for Raw being preempted on 9/11, he was going on vacation. God forbid we have an episode of Raw air while Lawler's on vacation. Little did they know what would happen in the next several years. So after Mom goes over, Mabel puts on his goofy crooked crown and does a very generic heel promo. "I am your king. I am your future WWF champion. Mo and I are the greatest tag team of all time. I'm also the most boring promo of all time." I added that last part for color. Hope you enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the Dean Douglas report card segment just a bit more. Again, I reiterate everything I said the other week. These segments are my new favorite part of the program. I don't care. They're so entertaining and so wacky. And I just love the whole idea that Shane Douglas is sitting in the production truck critiquing all these fucking horrible matches we see on a weekly basis. Then he buries all the talent that take part in it and talk about how much they suck. It was definitely ahead of its time. That's for damn sure. And now the tables have turned, because this is our first time getting to hear Douglas comment on a heel's performance. So naturally, he's all chipper. He's super stoked to have a positive evaluation about Men on a Mission. But first, he must read the definition of dominance. To rule or control something completely. Well, by golly, that really punctuates the talking point, doesn't it? Now, it'd be one thing to control or rule something, but that doesn't make it definitive enough. In order to be dominant, you must rule something completely. Emphasis on completely. So by order of magnitude, Dean Douglas can positively and confidently say that Mabel is prepared for Diesel. Therefore, he gives Mabel a letter grade of NC, which stands for New Champion. Boy, what a clever man Dean Douglas is, am I right? He really knows how to assess future champions. Reinventing the wheel with those letter grade systems. God. What a genius. I wonder what he would have graded the 1-2-3 Kid's performance with the Brooklyn Brawler. My guess is he would have given the kid an S for stupidity. Allowing himself to get jumped by the Brooklyn Brawler in the aisleway. Talk about not being aware of your surroundings. So, well, the kid eventually won after making a short comeback and stacking a Brawler. I guess that push for Steve Lombardi was more short-lived than I remember it being. They thought so little of Chris Candido, they were willing to sacrifice his momentum to further along the Brooklyn Brawler's fucking career. Then they just turn around and serve him up to Sean Waltman in 90 seconds. By the way, doesn't the Brooklyn Brawler wrestle Chris Candido on the pay-per-view? So why the fuck did they job him out on the go-home show? Haven't got a clue. All I know is Lawler spent more time drawing fake zits and pimples over Waltman's face using the Magistrator gimmick. Because did we mention, this is a wrestling show written by 5-year-olds for 5-year-olds. So then we get the Undertaker Tatanka match. Offhand, I do not remember the last time we had seen the Undertaker wrestle on Raw. I'd be willing to bet it's been well over 2 months. Of course, he didn't miss a beat. No ring rust to speak of. Christ, he looked better than Tatanka did. Tatanka's in there fucking up shit left and right. He almost killed Taker with a botched Samoan drop at one point. No idea what the hell he was thinking. He still has the worst punches out of anybody on the roster. I mean, on the scale of most Tatanka matches, it was passable. He got some heat on Taker, which was mostly saved by Paul Bearer trying to rally up the crowd, pleading for an Undertaker comeback. They chose a wonderfully brilliant moment to go to commercial here, too. During Taker's fucking comeback. Beautiful. And then, well, I remember Taker gave Tatanka a chokeslam and a tombstone for the 3. It happened like a minute after they came back from break. Again, the whole thing was done to promote the Undertaker Kama casket match in a week. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hadn't they already been doing a series of house show casket matches with those two? I think one had actually taken place as a dark match on the second In Your House. I really don't know what that was all about. Were they afraid Kama wasn't comfortable working casket matches? So they just had him and Taker work a series of them to try to figure out how to put together a cohesive match? I mean, they're not that hard to do. Yokozuna had 2 of them with Taker, and they were reasonably okay. Mark Henry had a decent one with Taker at a WrestleMania one year. Christ, if Mark Henry could be carried to a watchable casket match, surely Kama would have been fine. But that was that segment. Taker looked good. Tatanka was Tatanka. You know what you're getting with him. And then we had the most cringe infomercial I think I've ever seen. A segment they coined TV Trivia. TV spelled T-E-E space V-E-E. It was a game show platform with two contestants named George. Of course, all the trivia questions had to deal with Monday Night Raw. So the one guy answered everything but hottest TV show on USA, the show that marked the return of William Shatner, and of course the other guy named George, the one that looked like a homeless bum in a plumber outfit. Well, he kept answering Monday Night Raw, so he won. I know what you're all thinking. Yes, it was worse than I am making it out to be. But they did want to inform us that the September 11th episode will be the season premiere of Monday Night Raw. Because apparently Vince tracked that sort of thing. Beyond preposterous. And they still do it to this day. God, even World Championship Wrestling never tracked their season premiere. Because who gives a fuck? It's wrestling. There's no such thing as a season premiere in wrestling. Can you imagine a Bill Watts or a Jerry Jarrett or a fucking Vern Gagne trying to promote season premieres? They'd have been laughed out of their office positions. Then we had Jean-Pierre Lafitte going over Scott Taylor. Best part of the squash was the spot where Taylor went to throw a dropkick on Pierre, but Pierre just stood there and no-sold it while Taylor took a back bump. Didn't even budge. Just looked at the guy like, fuck you, dude. I ain't selling your lame-ass offense. So after Pierre spent a minute or two beating on Taylor, he then placed a pirate flag over his chest, marked him with the sign that he was going to rip his heart out of his chest. And then he came off the top with a flying senton for the 3. Barely grazing Taylor and almost overshooting him in the process. Had to point that out. They mostly talked about Bret Hart here. He was kind of the main focal point. Because that's another chapter in the entourage of meaningless Bret Hart mid-card feuds in 1995. He is now feuding with a fake pirate. So we've gone from fake clowns to fake kings to whatever in the hell Hakushi was supposed to be. I still never really figured it out. And now fake pirates. Thank God Carl Ouellet was a reasonably good worker. The only saving grace about that Bret Hart feud. The fact that they actually put some good matches together. Shitty gimmick notwithstanding. Then we followed that with another Goldust inset promo. And I did not do an audio sample for this go-around, so I cannot share the glorious pre-tape with you all. However, I can inform you, he wanted Shawn Michaels to come with him. Take that as you wish. And that led into our final segment, technically the go-home angle ahead of the SummerSlam pay-per-view. Here comes Diesel for an interview, which is a surefire way to guarantee some last-minute pay-per-view buys. Folks, if you aren't excited enough for SummerSlam this weekend, here's Diesel with a live mic. He's going to talk to you for a while. Yeah, that'll guarantee a boost in number of buys. So he bored the brakes off people with some gibberish about King Mabel. I didn't write down anything about it. The only thing I quoted was his go-home line where he said, after SummerSlam, the WWF would still be running on diesel power. And of course, the key to all this, while Diesel's in the middle of his promo, he's getting drowned out by the crowd, because the Bulldog is making his way down to the ring. So the people are all distracted by him. Diesel's lips are moving. But you could barely hear a word the guy's saying. So that part was lousy. And then Davey Boy gets in the ring and immediately goes into damage control mode. He informs us that Lex Luger is, cough, cough, unable to be here tonight due to, cough, cough, a medical emergency. Yeah, about that. Apparently he came down with a severe case of fuck Vince-itis. It is funny, though, because I know for a fact that Luger is still around for another couple of weeks before the Nitro debut. It's kind of an infamous moment in history where he appeared on the pilot episode of Nitro on September 4th, despite him still appearing on Raw the following week during the taping for that huge match on Raw. That was the preempted September 11th episode they've been talking about. So it was a big controversy at the time because it's like, what the hell's Luger doing being seen on both major networks when he's still technically employed with the WWF? Well, we got our answer. I don't think this was a case of Luger no-showing. I think they just needed to use it as a story angle to explain what was about to happen next. Because again, Luger ends up making an appearance at SummerSlam. I know he's not booked on the card, but they use him in an angle to set up that 6-man tag they have taped for the next Raw. Because again, I don't believe they air a Raw the night after SummerSlam. That's why they're really plugging that preempted 9/11 show. In any case, Bulldog wants to team with Diesel to face Men on a Mission. Even though we literally just saw Men on a Mission wrestle in the opener by beating up a pair of worthless job guys. Now Bulldog's like, nah, you know what? They're warmed up. How about some real competition, brother? And to that point, if you couldn't already see what was coming, you're either a Nimrod or you've never seen a professional wrestling show in your entire life. So out come the heels, Mabel and Mo, valiantly choosing to stand up to these two baby faces, despite having no real reason to accept the challenge. And so they have a match for all of about 90 seconds. Diesel spends a minute beating up Mo. And then right as Diesel and Mabel come face to face, Diesel's back is turned to the Bulldog. So when he's not looking, in comes the Bulldog to blindside Diesel with a right hook. Diesel ends up falling right into Mabel's arms as he gets planted with a boss man slam. So that accounts for Davey Boy's heel turn. And the heels work over Diesel's lifeless body while Jim Cornette makes his way down from the back, cheering them all on. Basically facilitating Bulldog's alignment with Cornette, alongside Owen and Yokozuna. Which is kind of funny, because didn't we literally just see a match between Owen and Yoko versus the Allied Powers at the last Day in Your House? Now all of a sudden they're buddy-buddy here on television just a week prior to the pay-per-view. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're heels. Heels have a knack for putting past disputes aside. Now, obviously, this is setting up some bigger stuff for Davey Boy when they introduce him into the title picture later on. Later in the fall, he'll work with Diesel for the WWF title. Eventually, him and Brett will do stuff together in 96. So it all ties together. This isn't just haphazard booking. It is going somewhere. It's just weird to think how quickly it all came together. You know, Bulldog goes from British American hero to ultimate betrayer in one night. Just to swerve the audience and be like, surprise, motherfucker. I'm a bad guy now. I remember the British Bulldog heel turn. I'd forgotten it was this soon. I mean, I thought it happened way closer to like mid-September or even early October. But no, they did it the week before SummerSlam. And Bulldog's not even booked on the card. That's the head-scratching part. I mean, in terms of the execution of the heel turn, the way this all came together, I guess the one thing that still jumps out to me, if Mabel and Mo knew that Bulldog was on their side from the beginning, why did Bulldog let Diesel beat up Mo for the first minute? Why not just attack Diesel beforehand? Doesn't that make more sense? I mean, I guess him being the lackey for King Mabel. I mean, you got to sacrifice guys where you can. I mean, it's Mo, for God's sake. Does anybody really care? But they sold it well. Vince was outraged on commentary. Lawler went over and high-fived everyone because he's a dick. That was kind of funny. And, yeah, nobody coming to the aid of Diesel here. No clue where Shawn was during this thing. Razor. The 1-2-3 Kid. The Click. None of Diesel's cohorts were available to lend a hand. Did they all get locked in the bathroom or something? That was another qualm I had with this angle. None of the babyfaces tried to come out to help. But getting past all the nitpicky shit, the rest of it was okay. Interesting decision for a go-home angle, I suppose. I mean, they all but spoiled how the main event is going to go down in 6 days. Pretty much telling you now, expect a load of bullshit to ensue. Because you know they're going to smoke and mirrors the fuck out of that match. I don't see how you can't. Mabel versus Diesel in a pay-per-view main event. I mean, that's not enough to hook people or keep them engaged. They need to do something. So this at least gave the impression that Davey Boy could somehow factor into the decision there. But we'll discuss everything in finer detail when we review the pay-per-view next weekend. A pay-per-view that I am very much not looking forward to talking about. I hated it when I was a kid. And I know I'm going to hate it even more seeing it as an adult. But it's all part of the WWF Retro Review series we're doing. So we've got to plunge into it with both feet. And we'll see if we come out on the other end. For now, we'll shift gears and move over to NXT. Wherein, as the build continues to the Fatal 4-Way Takeover in a couple weeks, they eagerly let us know that tonight, Triple H will make a special announcement. Didn't I already make a joke about the Triple H special announcement plugs like 3 weeks ago? Swear to God, there's one of these like every other week on the program. Of course, they usually just turn into giant NXT babyface promos. This place is awesome. We are the future. Blah, blah. They never hinted anything he's going to say. They're just like, the big guy's going to come out and talk. Stay tuned. And on the surface, I suppose it's more interesting than a lot of what we actually see booked on these programs. The big thing they're still chopping away at is this tournament dealia bob to crown number one contenders for the Ascension. This week we were in semifinal round mode. We open up with Enzo and Cass versus the Vaudevillains. And I go back to what I said the other week when it came to me asking simple questions like, who is the babyface and who is the heel? In this match, I was totally clueless. Enzo and Cass are clearly babyfaces to the crowd. But then as soon as the vaudevilles come out and do their wacky entrance, Renee's on commentary drooling over them and putting them over as her favorite act on the entire show. And yes, she did use the word act. Vomited in my mouth. I'd have fucking yanked her off the commentary booth with a giant hook if I were in charge. And then I would have fined her. So yeah, it's two quasi-babyface tag teams going at it here. And I guess the trend of these incredibly short weekly tournament matches continues. They wrestle for a few minutes. Enzo and Cass largely dominate the action until Aiden English dropkicked Big Cass while he was holding Simon Gotch. And then after Gotch caught Enzo coming off the top of the crossbody, the vaudevillains just hit their finish on Enzo and win. It was total WWE booking under the old Vince regime, where one team gets like 99% of the offense until the slip on the banana peel finish, where somehow the other team miraculously steals the win out of nowhere. I mean, it's hard to really critique any of the action because it was so damn short. There's like nothing to say about it. Cass is very jerky in his movement. Enzo still wrestles like the scraggly toady who never actually win a real fight in his life. But you can kind of tell they're deliberately keeping their matches on the short side. Perhaps for that very reason. And I guess I'd be remiss if I did not mention the completely pointless afterbirth, where, just to add insult to injury, the French fuckwit Sylvester Lafart and Marcus Torque Louis III came out and shaved part of Enzo's beard, to which even Tom Phillips made fun of on commentary. He's like, yeah, I don't really understand that one. Why go for the beard? He's got a point. It's a fucking beard. It'll grow back within a week. It's not like they attempted to shave his head. This was their plan. They sat back and waited for the match to end so they could be like, now's our chance. Let's go get that little turd and shave part of his beard. That'll make him mad. So the Legionnaires are apparently both unintelligent and retarded. And then we came to Triple H's special announcement. Didn't make us wait long for this one. Of course, I laughed when the announcers are talking about how rare it is that we see Hunter on these shows. So this announcement must be huge. We've seen Hunter like once a month on these NXT programs. The fuck are these guys talking about? It's not like it's been 6 months. Like, I even remember the last time Triple H came out to do one of these announcement promos. He sounded like he'd been gargling with old razor blades. Here, he at least sounded perfectly normal. And it was fairly predictable. Pretty much everything I joked about a few minutes ago. NXT is awesome. It's the hottest brand going today. The NXT fans are wonderful, passionate. It's very cut and dry. But there were two big takeaways from it. First, he gave us the official date for NXT TakeOver in a few weeks. September 11th. Boy, that is a really popular date, isn't it? And while he did not announce any of the matches, he informed us that all 3 major titles will be on the line. And the other thing, I actually forgot about this until he hinted at it. He said that next week, NXT will be unveiling the newest general manager that will be overseeing the weekly product. And for those that know, well, you know. I just thought it was funny when Hunter mentioned the new GM thing. Does anybody even remember who the current GM is at the moment? I had to look it up. It's JBL. Where the fuck has that guy been? Does anybody even remember the last time that guy's name was mentioned on camera? God, you want to talk about the most wordless authority figures in all of wrestling. Bradshaw's run as NXT general manager in 2014. He's been one of the most inept GMs of all time. I mean, at least we know the next guy that comes in actually has some credibility to his name. He had way more credibility as an on-screen performer than Tyler Breeze did. Tell you that much. This interview he did with Devin. Has there ever been anybody more laughably horrible at pretending to be a badass than Tyler Breeze? Well, actually, I can think of a few. Dolph Ziggler comes to mind. But this interview just had me in stitches by the end. You know, Breeze is all miffed that he got screwed in last week's title match by Tyson Kidd. And like he's trying to be all serious here and tell Devin, I'm angry. I just lost my chance of becoming champion. Wouldn't you be mad too, Devin? Of course, Devin has to stand there nodding her head like a impassioned robot. This did not help my composure. And there's a long, dramatic pause. Finally, Breeze caps off by going, that doesn't sit well with me. And Tyson will soon realize that Tyler Breeze is more than just a pretty face. I'm not kidding you. He actually said that. Those were words that were scripted for Tyler Breeze to say on camera. Can only imagine what Tyson was doing in the back. Shaking in his boots at the thought of what Tyler fucking Breeze would do to him. He might comb his hair, or call him an uggo, or take a selfie with him. So then we had Tyson Kidd versus Tyler Breeze, unadvertised. They just threw the match out there in the middle of the show. Probably not even fair to really call it a match. I mean, this, I think, was shorter than the tag opener. It was a hell of a little scrap they had for all of 90 seconds. Tyson pretty much whipped Tyler the whole time. And then as Tyler Breeze rolled out to the floor, he grabbed his cell phone and decided that he had enough of this ass beating. So he took an intentional count-out loss. And what made the whole thing funnier is that because Tyson is still technically a heel, he gets the count-out win. So he's pumping his fist. He's like, yeah, baby, woo! He's taking a victory lap around the ring and showboating like he just won the main event of WrestleMania. That was fucking awesome. I love that part. I was like, what an asshole. You know, again, not really much of a match. More just a way to push on the big four-way they're eventually building to for TakeOver. I mean, this was probably the most effective way to have two heels interact without accidentally making the other likable. I mean, Tyler Breeze is still a coward for backing down from the fight. But Tyson Kidd celebrating like he actually accomplished anything. That made it perfect. This was probably my favorite part of the show this week. Then we had Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lita. Lita Lynch. You know, it's one thing to have your childhood heroes and try to emanate their behaviors. Becky was outright stealing Lita's gimmick here. In front of God and everybody. I'm starting to wonder if she would have had grounds to sue for gimmick infringement. Lita's probably too nice. In any case, I stepped out of the room to heat my coffee up while this was going on. I only missed the first couple minutes. When I came back, they were doing awkward-looking grappling on the mat. By the end, the match was okay. The one thing that really jumped out to me here was how over-exaggerated Becky's work was. She was overselling everything, constantly screaming and overdoing it with voicing frustration. Again, she was very green. She had a lot to learn. It's not her fault. But it really stood out going back and watching her work from around this time. I mean, you could tell she was really passionate about what she was doing. She wanted to get better. But I'm sure they had to sit down with her at some point and be like, girl, you got to cool it down with the screaming. You're going to turn off viewers that way. Charlotte won with natural selection. And then several infomercial plugs later, we had an unexpected Enzo Cass promo. Logically, Enzo was pissed off about having a quarter of an inch of his beard shaved off. So now he's all in, baby. He's calling out Sylvester Lefort, telling him that if he wants to get down and dirty with the Clippers, they can settle the score at TakeOver in a hair versus hair match. Because that makes sense, right? Let's do hair versus hair before we've ever actually seen either guy have a direct one-on-one match. Sounds about right. Boy, howdy. Enzo Amore on a TakeOver special in a singles match. They were really rolling the dice on that one, hoping for the best. I don't recall a single thing about that match. So maybe it wasn't as bad as I'm making it out to be in my head. But I guess we will see. So then Mojo Rawley beat Steve Cutler in a few minutes. And then Mojo did a borderline incomprehensible promo because his voice was totally shot. Called out Bull Dempsey. Told him the smile is gone. What a shame. Poor Mojo. He lost his mojo. And his smile, apparently. Yeah, the people did not give a shit about this promo, by the way. They chanted for Bull. And he's the heel. So that should tell you something right there about the state of Mojo Rawley in the eyes of the NXT fans. Even those inbred couldn't stand the hype. The feeling is mutual. So then we arrive at the main event, the second of our semifinal tournament rounds here. Sami Zayn and Adam Rose versus the Lucha Dragons. And whereas in the opener, I was trying to decipher which team was babyface and heel, here I'm pretty sure both teams were outright babyface. So who we were supposed to cheer for in this given scenario? Not a clue. I just wondered how funny it would have been if Sami came out wearing his El Generico mask. Then we could have had 3 masked luchadors working in the same ring. Plus Adam Rose. More accurately, it would have been 2 actual luchadors versus a fake French-Canadian luchador, who I think also happened to be Muslim. Sami Zayn is an interesting cat. With all the diversity there, I mean, you could pair him with a black lesbian nun, and I think you'd have all your tracks covered. So anyway, this actually ended up being a pretty fun match by the end, despite not having a clear-cut protagonist and or villain. You had Zayn and Rose working over Kalisto pretty extensively, so I guess you can make the claim Kalisto was more of the babyface in peril. They did finally attach a name to that inverted reverse DDT thing he always does. Solito del Sol, which sounded vaguely familiar when I heard the announcers mention it. I just couldn't put a name to it for the life of me. But things end up breaking down toward the end. We had some big dramatic near-fall sequences. Sin Cara took out Sammy with a big dive on the floor. Then Kalisto gave Rose the Solito del Sol. Sin Cara came off the top with a senton. And right as Sammy tried to get in the ring to break up the fall, too late to the party. The ref had already counted 3. I know I sort of immediately leapt to the finish there and didn't talk about any of the middle stuff. Again, you can't really call it a traditional tag match because you really didn't have a definitive team to root for here. I mean, the people liked Adam Rose and Sami Zayn, but they also chanted Lucha during various points. It was a split crowd. I can't really find anything to nitpick here. I guess my only issue really kind of boils down to the simple fact that, you know, they are trying to build some credible challengers to face the Ascension for the belts. Presumably, I believe the Ascension are still heels. Even though, again, the dynamic is completely off because the crowd always chants "Yah" during their matches. But let's assume the Ascension are still bad guys. How does putting Kalisto and Sin Cara in a match with another babyface team help get them over? I mean, you want to drum up sympathy for them and make them look like underdogs. Sammy and Adam aren't really going to be an effective heat magnet in this case. You need to have them wrestle an actual set of heels that can get the people to boo and to test them. FTR would have been a great example of that. But they sat this tournament out for whatever reason. So I would have restructured the whole tournament to make sure we didn't have situations like this, where you had 2 babyface teams wrestling each other in the semifinal round, not really giving the crowd a definitive team to cheer. But the action was good. The people liked it. So, yeah, I guess we're getting the Vaudevillains versus the Lucha Dragons in the final round. Given that I think Gotch and English are still heels, I have to think the Lucha Dragons are winning the whole tournament and getting the title shot. But we'll see. Overall, it was a pretty good show. Not a banger or anything like that. But they're slowly putting the TakeOver card together. The hype machine is coming along. So now they'll spend the next couple weeks putting the finishing touches on all the title programs, and we'll see what happens. I mean, they're yet to announce the 4-way, but they've had everybody interacting on television in some capacity, so you got to expect a big angle to be happening in the next week or two. But we'll see. We will see. And again, that'll round out this one. So next week is the big SummerSlam 95 rundown. And again, I think because that preempted Raw is happening, it'll just be this and the classic NXT classic NXT episode next week. And that'll be it. So thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, make sure you subscribe, comment, and do your business to support the channel. And I'll catch you guys soon. Take care. Peace out. Ugh.